Great. So again, I appreciate you all having discussions in your various breakouts by ESD, and curious to hear the takeaways. So, for example, in my room, which was the Puget Sound ESD, we talked about essentially the challenges because I don't get the sense that, at least in the Puget Sound ESD, and again, it's such a huge region serving 440,000 students, but it doesn't seem like it has the same kinds of navigation supports that are in other ESDs. So we spent time talking about how there just aren't the staffing within schools, how the caseload is pretty high for the different, not just school counselors, but having very few college and career navigators, not a lot of CBO support in the same way, just not enough staffing overall. And we also talked about the difference in culture, how instant gratification is a challenge that a lot of staff are seeing with students. How in the age of smartphones and buying things quickly on Amazon, it's hard to imagine, for example, not using ChatGPT to write an email if you're sending to say a college admissions person or just in general, and how there isn't the same emphasis on critical thinking. And so those were some of the challenges that we spoke of, but also identified a few of the partnerships that came up in earlier share outs that would have been great if we have the resources, the funding in Puget Sound ESD. But I'm curious to hear what came up in the other ESD breakouts.
Go ahead and share from ESD 189. We had so many great ideas. Oh man, I'm so excited. Um, One of them was, since the virtual events and some of the in-person events have been sparsely attended, is to transition to doing financial aid completion events at the college fairs that are regionally situated around our Wakamin, Skagit, and Island County region, and really like doing labs at all of the college fairs instead of doing events outside of there, and then having our information for one-on-one booking sessions and things like that. And then another great idea that was mentioned right at the end was food trucks with financial aid, pairing the two of them together. I love an alliteration moment. It's so good. Um, what else from my group? There were so many good ideas.
Group chats between school counselors and staff from different areas.
Yes, like some sort of asynchronous communication channel for all of us to like have a signal together and like jump in when you can. But like if you're at a grocery store and somebody asks you a financial aid question and you don't know the answer, it's after work hours. Like it's kind of like having that bat phone, like with Christina Winstead, you know? So I thought that was a brilliant idea to have that shared communication among our region and just to pull the wealth and to have the understanding and the belief within that system that you only jump in if you have capacity, and you're available truly. Um, so that was really cool. Anything else from my group that I missed?
Okay, well, let's go down the list then. How about ESD 101 in room one? Raul, I'd be very curious to hear what was shared in your room. Or if there's anyone else in the ESD 101 room who would like to share. Love to hear what came up in terms of promising practices, things worth replicating, even challenges that came up.
It was a pretty
I was
quiet
trying to look
group.
in.
Go on.
I had shared this year. Oh, okay. I had just shared this year that we had FAFSA Fridays at our school. So the students that had completed their financial aid every Friday would get a snack of some sort. And then at the end, we would raffle off. And that seemed to bring more student curiosity in to ask, how do I get a snack? Maybe. And then we were able to talk to them more about the financial aid process. Members or higher this year. So I don't know if that has something to do with it as well, but it was fun and the kids seemed to like.
Great. And Raul, looked like you were trying to unmute there for a second. No, you weren't? Okay. Were there any other ideas or thoughts that came up in ESD 101 in the greater Spokane area? Okay, let's move on to room number 2. So that was ESD 105, and that's in the greater Yakima area. Yasleen or Rosa, any takeaways that you'd like to share?
Something I shared, well, one of the questions involved how we can better support the students with like financial aid. And I suggested, just like advocating and spreading like the word about financial aid sessions like available, whether it be at the high schools or at the community colleges in Yakima. And someone had added that YBC does hold financial aid like sessions, like info sessions for people to attend, both students and parents as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Any other thoughts or sharings from ESD 105? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move on to ESD 112 in Southwest Washington. Joshua, anything that came up there or anyone else in the ESD 112 room?
I can share. So we had a lot of conversation just around challenges with staff capacity. Oftentimes, we don't have enough designated staff on the school site to be able to provide financial aid support to students, especially the individualized support that is needed. And then there's a lot of scheduling conflicts. Students and families are not able to attend these events because of the timing of the event and the conflicts with maybe after school activities such as athletic events. We also talked about the importance of identifying community-based organizations to partner with to support some of these events. The challenge is that we don't have the time typically to develop those partnerships as well as maintain those partnerships. We also talked about utilizing text messaging because that has been a response that the students have been responsive to that method of communication. And then we also talked about more district-wide and school-wide collaborations that could maybe promote financial aid, healthy competition, and using incentives to increase financial aid completion. And if anyone else from the group wants to share, that would be great too.
Yeah, Joshua, that was great. Thank you so much. I'll just wait a second before moving on in case anyone else would like to add anything. Okay, well, let's look at Capital Region ESD 113. What came up for that region? Any challenges, any bright spots, anything that's worth replicating in that particular ESD 113? Sean, what did folks have to say?
Yeah. So, like others, we did talk about the supports needed, especially to make everything work. As one of the things is we talked about how many of the people who ended up losing jobs or losing roles were counselors, career center folks. There was conversation also about just more of a partnership between like policymakers and the staff in the schools, the staff working in the districts, really ensuring that their voices are captured. And one of the other things that we talked about specifically in this region was that this region has multiple institutions, but in some ways it doesn't really feel like a college town. And so one of the ideas that was brought up was really trying to give more of a feeling of like the pennants from the schools and school memorabilia here and there, just making it very clear how this is something that can be modeled for students, that this is something that is an opportunity. So they feel kind of almost like a pride that they have Evergreen or South Puget Sound or St. Martin's University here, and so just making it clear for folks that there's kind of like that encouragement even before they look at graduating their senior year. And then one of the things that was mentioned was really ensuring that if we have goals with policies, that policy should not overtake capacity, which just means a lot of times policies are created without consideration of capacity for folks. And I think that goes with the partnership idea. And then the last thing we did was talked about professional development and how a lot of times there's hopes for it, but making sure that it's virtual or it's accessible, making sure that is something that's supported across the district, across the school, so that people are not taking extra time, that they feel encouraged to learn new things and are actually getting benefit from it in a way of how they can apply it for the work they're doing and feel supported. And then I think the last thing was just sharing out and making sure that things are not siloed like we talked about earlier. So collaborating, people being aware of what communications are happening, what outreach is happening, what support is in the region.
Yeah, that was very comprehensive. Really appreciate that, Sean. Yeah, and creating that college going culture, that's a thing. I like the idea of elevating the institutions in the region and having students thinking from an early age about, okay, where do I want to go after high school? That's fantastic. Yeah, and the other things, policies, professional development. How about ESD 114, the Olympic ESD? Jocelyn, what were you hearing in your group?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about, one of the biggest gaps in support was how do with a lot working with a lot of the students, it's a lot of individual situations. So how do the counselors and the school support staff have the capacity to do that if there's so many hours in the school day? So how do we share like resources? Like how do we work together in helping those individual situations? We also did talk about how transportation, like for example, like we might have like evening events or whatnot, but how do those students get to those events if they rely on the school bus to get to school and they don't have other means of transportation?
Mhm. Yeah, those are valid concerns. Yeah, anyone else from the Olympic ESD who would like to share from that room? Okay, well, let's move on to room 6, and that was the statewide room. Christina and Lauren, you were in there. What were you hearing in the statewide room?
Yeah, our room really talked about, again, what are ways that we can capitalize on spaces where folks are already connecting broadly across regions. One of the areas mentioned was the fall counselor workshops that happen across the state, and can there be a shared vision, shared conversation in that type of space?
Yeah, anything else come up in the statewide room? Christina from Wasac, is there anything that you heard that Lauren didn't mention?
We filled out our sheet really well. So I will say we didn't talk as much, but we definitely did our homework, Ashley. Don't worry. But I think that the other piece that I saw in here was just trying to make sure that we're bringing in all the partners. And so like libraries, how are we better supporting like justice involved youth, like as a statewide system? How are we building these systems that make it a little easier for those in regions to use?
Great. Yeah, thank you. All right, we've got 2 more rooms to go. So we have actually 3. We've got room number 7, that was ESD 123, and that's down in Southeast Washington. Adrian from College Success Foundation, what were you hearing in that room?
Yeah, we were a pretty small group. Some of the things that we talked about were the partnerships that have been really important. Gear Up, Communities and Schools. Shout out to Elevate from United Way of Blue Mountains, and Columbia Basin College have all been really important partners in the work. We also talked about getting some great ideas from the statewide updates and regional initiative session earlier, with ideas such as ways to support and conduct outreach to Running Start students. And then some of the gaps that we talked about included miscommunication and misinformation about financial aid, making sure that students and parents are getting the same information, that they're getting accurate information, that they know who their trusted sources of information are is important. And we also talked about um, just about the fear around starting the financial aid application process. In some of the same ways that we've talked about the fear surrounding this earlier in today's sessions, and then also just the fear of starting kind of a very independent step in a lot of students' lives. And yeah, I think those are some of the main things that we mentioned. And then in terms of tools or communication systems, someone in our group mentioned having kind of like a common website or resource hub, which I'm seeing some folks are talking about in the chat as well. So I just wanted to point out that that was, yeah, something that came up for us as well.
Great. Yeah. Wonderful recap. I really appreciate that, Adrian. Yeah, I am hearing some common themes here popping up. Anyone else from ESD 123 who'd like to add anything to that? Okay, and we just had one more room actually that hasn't spoken yet, and that was room number 8, and that's ESD 171. That's the North Central Washington ESD, Wenatchee and Points North. Sage?
So
yeah, thank you.
unfortunately, there was nobody in the meeting from 171. So we did not have a breakout room in the end.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for naming that. So it sounds like when we're talking about folks who are not here, we'll need to see if we can find some folks in ESD 171 to join the conversation so they can support their students in the region.
And when you
Sage, I
look
just
at,
want,
yep.
oh, I just want to let you know though, I saw your important like information that you put in the chat and I did add it to the notes so that your voice is heard.
Oh, thank you so much.
Beautiful. And then I also wanted to just shout out, they're doing a great job. Their completion rates are high. Maybe they're just like, we got this. I don't know, but I want them to be here to like give them their flowers and be like, great work, everyone.
Well, and also to share what's working. What is their
Right?
secret sauce?
What are you doing? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, so one thing that we did talk about is this idea of sharing data. So data beyond the dashboard. So what could that look like as a state? And what are some areas that y'all would like some support with so that we could perhaps design either some partnerships or some policies that could support y'all?
I've already talked with Sean about this, and I'm dreaming up a world in which I can hover over a region and see the recipe of ingredients that went into that completion amount. So, like, hover over the dashboard and you see, like, these are all the things that contributed towards that. So you can kind of get ideas. In between our amazing summits, you can still see, like, okay, these people did this, these people did this, and apply it in real time.
Yeah, those concrete things. That it would be nice to know how we can replicate things that are working, events, and that sort of thing, so that we could bring it to our individual regions. And I see, Sean, what you're writing in the chat here, a dashboard that is filterable about which strategies can be done based on different volunteer and budget capacities. Yes. Yes, really like that, because that was, again, a theme that I've heard not just from my breakout room, but others, that how do we do more with less? Because that's a reality for so many regions. Are there other ways of sharing data or partnership opportunities in that realm that could be useful to y'all, since we're all together from across the state?
On that last dashboard one, in a dream world, I would also love in that dashboard to know who has had challenges passing their levies, so we know who might be experiencing cuts, so that we could provide resources and supports to try to like best support those regions that might have a decrease in staffing that's doing this work. That's my dream world, so that we can best support you in your time of need.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fantastic. And moving on to the next question about looking at mechanisms for ongoing communication and coordination, because Christina, that's basically what you're talking about here. How could we coordinate that? Would it be through WASAC? Would it be through a different partnership? I'm just thinking about what the mechanism could be or how we could communicate as a state.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is the right now I literally Google each of your districts and I look to see, did your stuff pass? And then I try to find ways to support. But I think there's got to be a better way than just Google.
Yeah, and I guess one wondering that I have is how embedded is WASAC with school districts across the state? Is there regular communication between, say, WASAC and the School Counselor Association and other ways of reaching individual schools so that information can be shared back and forth?
That I feel like we do have a really good, like we have, if Kathy is still on here, Kathy, if you're here, we have some amazing listservs that we use. We connect a lot with WASCA and with other organizations that are doing kind of similar stuff. So I think I feel like we do have pretty good, and we have WASAC Wednesdays the first Wednesday of every month, which is like a good connection point that we could leverage to do more stuff like this if you all wanted that. I'm always happy to like what works best for y'all is what's going to work best for me.
Yeah, so it sounds like we have the infrastructure. It's just a matter of leveraging it in a way that increases access and reach.
And I think part of the pain point is the capacity on the school end. It's not for lack of a desire to connect with the resources and the information and the training. It's truly like time to do it.
I would agree to that. And and thinking about how we continue to evolve, depending on changes, because change is inevitable. I think the more we embed financial aid and post-secondary readiness, and I saw this in the comments earlier in more of like an MTSS model, like embedding within the established MTSS model at schools or district, like even approaching financial aid completion from in that way around, really clearly laying out what are the tier 1 services that are provided across the school. What are those tier 2 services? What about tier 3? But even approaching any like school specific goals in that way around disproportionality. So if the school has a goal in closing disproportionality and outreach and support for specific affinity groups, then approaching the support of those groups from a tiered model as well. And setting up those subgroups of students that we want to prioritize because they've, generationally been undersupported and underserved. And so just want to echo that. I did see that in the chat. And yeah, it's been top of mind around how to embed this work more into structures within schools so that there's some sustainability. Maybe it won't look the same as when you have teams of college and career specialists and 2 or 3 CDOs in your school, things will change all the time, but approaching the work through that tiered model, I think, is how we'll be able to continue moving the work as best as we can, just from a district perspective.
That's a really interesting idea of layering this on MTSS and identifying particular students that need additional supports. I think that's a fantastic thing. I'm also seeing in the chat, Leanne, your comment about Limitless, how you reach 21 of 39 counties and nearly 1 in 3 high school students represented by partnerships. Yeah, could you say a little bit more about that? How you could be a conduit of information and leverage meetings and convenings?
Sure, Eric, happy to do that. And I think it's something that we've already talked about a little bit, and you saw, maybe got to experience in action in our at our in-person convening. But because, we meet regularly, and we often invite like folks in from across the state to share updates and information. Financial aid has been an important topic at all, like I think every single one of our sessions that we've had where we've brought people together this year. We send out a monthly newsletter, and we're always happy to. I know not everyone, like the last thing we need is another newsletter in our inbox, but sometimes you just don't know when the right one is that's going to hit. So we're always happy to add information and add links to that to help spread the word and share things. And we're happy to, use our opportunity, like use our like access, our network, our relationships with each other to help share this information, because really what we're all trying to do is help our students and families in our state, right?
Yeah, exactly. And is there a link where folks could get your monthly
Yeah, let me get
newsletter?
the link to sign up and I'll drop it in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
I've got it, Leanne. I was just pulling it up.
Okay, thank you.
So we probably need some actual person to figure out how to, in a very concise way, put together the highest FAFSA per human strategies, because I think we've identified them, right? And it's fun to have these like sharings from these various regional partnerships, but there's pretty clear common themes about what tends to lead to increased FAFSA completion. And as much as we love to do local control and local sensitivity, it actually is the case that one size fits all, right? I mean, it actually is the case. We heard it today that the same strategy works for Lummi as works in United Way Blue Mountain, as works in Kitsap County. Like you just have to have actual people in the schools helping people fill out their FAFSAs. And if you're going to give a grant to a CBO, you can have them do that. Or you can have a directly state funded person. And then on the events side, I mean, we heard a little bit of this at the governor's last FAFSA board, and we heard a little bit of it today. Like events with food tend to have a higher yield rate than events without food. But candidly, I'm not sure that the events outside of school hours give you a huge bang for the buck. I'm really not. So, if I'm a philanthropy, there's no way I'm giving money to some community-based organization just to do FAFSA or do financial aid outreach, unless they're actually doing the couple things that many of the great people on here have identified actually yield results. So, by all means, let's keep having convenings where, we can continue learning. People come up with new, interesting ideas all the time. But generally, I think we have a pretty good idea of what it is that actually does move the needle.
Yeah, and if that's the case, Senator Hansen, from where you sit, how would you recommend that we fund that work, especially given the financial realities?
Yeah, we're not funding any new stuff. I mean, it's not happening this year. It's not happening next year. I mean, I'm like, look, it's kind of like what we did with ECAP slots. Like, this is a great role for philanthropic partners. I mean, if you want to, I felt bad for the Puget Sound DSD people, right? Like in the Seattle public school, the Seattle high schools should have Seattle Promise outreach workers in the schools, or at least they did the last time I checked. Outside, that's going to be a problem, right? And a reason is the 1835 people were prioritized to other regions with lower completion rates. We tried several years to get that expanded. We got half a one in Thurston County, I think. And that was great, right? But there's not going to be any state money for stuff like this next year, probably not the year after that. But if anybody has the ear of, or is a philanthropic funder, I mean, I can write the grant. You just do basically exactly what the United Way Blue Mountain people did, / what the 1835 people in the high performing districts do. You have a caseload, you have people with a caseload in the school. They have authority to pull students from the classes. They have access to the WASAC portal. They have a spreadsheet so they can track people. They do very individualized follow-up. up. Like you have, ideally, you don't have 1 to 600 people, which is the 1835 ratio, but you have like 1 to 300 or 1 to 100, or in my dream scenario, you have the Lakeside School ratio, which is 1 to 40. But like, I mean, for better or for worse, like that, I mean, that's a philanthropic play for the foreseeable future. But it is still helpful to have the extremely concise dollars per FAFSA completed, or dollars per, humans per FAFSA completed idea of what you actually do. So it's not just the idiotic thing we did in the budget a couple of years ago, where it's like, we're going to give some money to CBOs to think great thoughts about FAFSA. And you're like some of it worked, some of it you might as well set the money on fire. And so distilling the lessons sort of, quickly in between this and the governor's thing is helpful, whether that's a philanthropic thing near term or a state budget thing whenever we have more money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we could even look at regional philanthropy too, instead of.
Perfect. Love it. Love it.
If folks, oh, go ahead, Shannon.
Sorry, that was an accidental hand raise.
That's funny. I'm going to throw in the chat again, if other organizations want to see an example of an ROI type, like we said, like how much funding we helped students access in like the before and the after of the budget cuts. So that's, if we wanted to bring that to philanthropy or even collective action, like I don't think we can stress enough, like we can all pull our resources together too. Like as a group, like we need philanthropy, we need the state of Washington, but we also need each other. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that into the document, into the chat as well.
Great, thank you. And I know that we're going to have another summit coming up in the fall. And I understand we could use some partners for that. I know, Christina, you're driving that. So that could be a good next step after today. So Christina, is there anything you want to say about the fall summit?
Yeah, I think we have it on the next slide, potentially. Oh, we just did that. Next slide. Oh, did we put one in the next slide? Okay, we'll do this first and then we'll go back to the survey, which is just as critical. Okay, fall is coming quick. I know you might not think it. I don't want to ruin everyone's summers, but I'm already doing stuff for class of 27. So we might as well start getting prepared for the Financial Aid Summit in the fall. We're going to do this again. But while I'm going to be lifting, I would love help from those who would like to support this. If you love financial aid and you want to partner to help lift this summit in the fall, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if you want to attend, you can register right now. I already set up registration for next year. We are hosting this on September 24th from 9 to noon. I have looked at every conference calendar possible. There was nothing on that date, but there's everything around those dates. But yes, please join us so we can connect again, prepare for the fall, and celebrate our successes.